Hi everyone, it's Wendy Laidlaw here from Heal Endometriosis Naturally. I am really excited to have with me Elizabeth from United States of America. Hi Elizabeth.
Hi.
Great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and share with your success on the Heal Endometriosis Naturally 12-week foundation program. So thank you so much for doing that. Now, I know when I do these interviews and people are listening to them and the feedback I get, they're just like, oh, they love hearing like where you were, what the journey was like and where you are now. So perhaps you could give a little bit of background as to what your body was like, what was happening for you before you discovered the Heal Endometriosis Naturally program.
Sure. Yeah, so I had a huge flare-up of symptoms after I had my daughter. When my cycles started returning, took me a while to figure out what it was, and I went through a lot of testing and scans and doctor's visits until finally figured out what exactly was going on. And at that point, I was having pain every day, abdominal pain, back pain, hip pain. I just felt awful. And it was really getting in the way of my daily life. I had so been looking forward to returning to all my exercise and activities after having my daughter. And I used to love to run and bike and hike, and my pain was getting in the way of that. I wasn't able to do those things really. And if I did, I'd just pay for it. And everything would get worse. So I was feeling really hopeless. I was feeling really frustrated with myself, very angry with my body, and just feeling like this is never going to get better. Like this is just how I'm going to have to live out the rest of my life. Because I had tried things before. I'd had multiple surgeries. I'd been on hormones and medications, and it just seemed to make everything more complicated, and make things worse. So I was in a rough spot.
I know, and it's really hard to hear like where you came from and that state that you were in. And when you look back now, when you hear yourself talk about it, how does that make you feel?
I mean, it's like depressing to hear myself talk about it, but in the same way, it's like so gratifying because I don't feel like that anymore. I'm not living my life like that day to day. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and there was hope for me, and I didn't know it back then. So in a way, it just feels like it feels far away. Even though it wasn't that far away.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's amazing. And full credit to you for recognizing, identifying that for you, the medical machine just was making you more ill and making things more complicated. And I guess our conditioning is, our mindset is that if we're unwell, we go to a doctor. They're supposed to make us better. If the doctor can't make us better, we go to a specialist. They're supposed to make us better. But I think what's very difficult for women with endometriosis is when that doesn't happen, and then you're getting progressively worse. So I know you'd listened to the audio version of my book before reaching out to me. So what I think maybe you could share a bit more about, your experience with the audiobook and then what resulted in you reaching out for more support.
Sure. Yeah, I listened to your book on audio, and it was a huge eye-opener for me. I mean, I've heard other women say this before about your book, but it felt like you were talking right to me. I'd literally be walking around my house listening to it going, yes, and I had tried some recommendations from your book. The biggest thing that I did was cut out wheat pretty much immediately, and had noticed some huge benefits with that. And so then I kind of realized, wow, she's really onto something. I'm really onto something. And then my progress started slowing down. I started kind of having some roadblocks, felt like I was just kind of stuck. Yeah. And that's when I had reached out via email and started the program. So
yeah. Oh, well, that's great. Well, I'm so glad that, because I think some women do tend to try and do it on their own through the book, which is fantastic. And that's why I wrote it. But then equally, I didn't want any woman to think like they failed, or it's a reflection on them if they hit a roadblock or they regress, or they stay stuck, and that's why I created the 12-week online foundation program as a step-by-step hand-holding way to kind of like really look at all the different, because when you're in pain and you're suffering, it's sometimes quite hard to make those changes. You don't have the headspace, to even think about those things. Was that what it was like for you?
Yeah, it was, and you just don't know where to go next. And I remember you saying in your book that like you had been the most impatient person in the world and just kind of tried to overhaul a bunch of things all at once, but then that set you back, and I could kind of see myself starting to head that way.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, I better reach out before I set myself back too far. So
Well, I'm delighted that you did, and I think you'd watched the free webinar that I do, and then decided to take that positive step. So maybe for those who don't understand, or maybe sitting on the fence, or they're like, well, what is this 12-week foundation program, and how? Well, firstly, what is it, and how has it helped you?
So it's essentially a slow, systematic way of making adjustments over a period of time, and learning about yourself and your body, and finding out what your triggers are, what's causing you inflammation, and then, sorry, something's popping up on my screen here, and then um, just kind of leading you through making different changes, but very slowly and very systematically. And I think that's what was really key. And then coaching, essentially one-on-one sessions with you throughout the process, which was extremely helpful.
Oh, that's good. And it's nice because I was interviewing another student who's finished recently as well, and she was saying that she was just as impatient like I was, like you were, to like, I want to change everything and I want to change it now. And then, because we're all like that in this fast-paced society that we live in now. But I recognized that in myself, that was, it didn't benefit me to go rushing in. It almost, it made me more despondent, and then made me more kind of like, spinning around like, well, I don't know what worked then, and I don't know what didn't work then. So that was why I structured it to be week by week, step by step. And how did you find that to those changes that were suggested? How easy was that to implement?
It was easy because it was slow. Because change is hard. Change is hard no matter which way you spin it, and especially if you're making lots of changes, which you do have to make to feel better. But I felt that the pace was good. I felt like it was doable. And yeah, I kind of looked forward to each next week, like, oh, what's going to be on the webinar, what's going to be the topic this week, what else can I learn, what else can I do. So it felt very manageable.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And it's interesting to hear about change, because I read something the other day. We all seek change and fear change in equal measure. And it's so true, isn't it? It's like, we want change, but no, I'm too scared. I want change, I'm too scared. And I know I was like that. I was like so impatient. And we all know, I think, whatever stage anyone's at, whoever's listening to this, you will know instinctively that there is change required, and you're probably resisting it because you don't know what that means. And then, is that going to be more pain or more suffering? And actually, so how did you find making those changes for you? How was it?
Some things were challenging and some things were easy. The idea of, well, everything that I'm trying and everything that I'm doing is to make myself better, is to heal myself. So that principle made making changes easier. But definitely, I would run up against resistance with myself. And you were helpful in that regard, because I remember you on the webinar saying, it's normal to feel resistant to it. Just listen to what's going on. When you would make a recommendation and you kind of feel yourself going, oh God, I can't, but to like acknowledge it listen to it, and then just, realize that, okay, like that's how I feel about it, but I can try it, I can push through it, and it was worth it.
Great. Yeah. And it's wonderful to even hear you talk. It's because it's learning to get to know ourselves, because I think when we're in pain and we're distraught and we're feeling hopeless and helpless and we're just like desperately going up to doctors saying help us, we don't know what we're thinking and feeling, and we're just like literally being swept up in this hamster wheel of what's going on. So, but as you say, I knew, and I know you did, and that's why we come onto the program. We know that there are changes that need to be made, but to be able to hear the various parts of us and give reflection and time to that can be quite surprising. So what was a surprise to you about the program? That you, obviously the webinar kind of gives an overview, and the book gives you an idea, but what surprised you the most pleasantly about the program?
Yeah, I think what surprised me the most was how it's so much more than I thought it was. I mostly, the goal that I had in mind was to reduce my pain, get out of pain, feel better, just kind of have improved quality of life. But the ways in which that happened, I didn't anticipate. It was just so much more. So I have so much more self-awareness than I did. I learned so much about myself and my body. I really feel in tune with my body, and I feel like I have a much better relationship with it.
Yeah.
I am more accepting of it. I'm more loving with it. I've listened to it, and it's responded back to me, as a result. That anger and resentment that I used to feel toward it, I really don't feel that anymore. And all of those nice byproducts, and really just getting in tune with myself and my body. I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear that, because even the way that you're talking, we were talking just briefly before I started the interview, and I can really hear the confidence that you have in your body now. And that's the most wonderful thing to hear. And I know I have confidence in my body now. And those that come through the program, they get their body, they have a relationship with their body. And it sounds a weird concept to have a relationship with your body, doesn't it? It sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's so true, isn't it? And we're not taught, you growing up, how to read the signs, how to listen to our body, what it likes and what it doesn't like. We're almost kind of made robotic, that we just take things and that we're supposed to have certain outcomes. So what would you say to anyone if they were considering the foundation program, and they're at the moment, maybe they're in high levels of pain with endometriosis or cysts or whatever is going on for them, and what would be the encouraging words? Why would they want to invest in this for themselves?
Because I really believe that it's the only way to address the underlying issue with endometriosis. Anytime we go to a doctor, anytime we have surgery or go on hormones, you're essentially just trying to mask the symptoms. But you're not addressing the underlying issue, and at times it's making the underlying issue worse. And so to get at the root of what the problem is. And it works really well. I felt skeptical when I first started. It was kind of just this leap of faith. I thought to myself, oh, I'll be the only person that it doesn't work for. But I proved myself wrong. And yeah, I should mention too that I work in medicine myself. I'm a physician assistant, and I'm like part of that whole medical model. That's how I was trained, and I have a very open mind about things, but I still, it was hard for me to kind of detach from that and head to like a natural, holistic way of dealing with this issue. But I'm so glad that I did. And it's just really opened my eyes to like the world of natural healing and just the amazing things that it can do that medicine just can't offer. And you're worth it. You're worth that. You're worth feeling better and your body will thank you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it with you saying that you work in the medical field as well. You understand that process. Sorry, we're getting a bit of feedback here. Sorry for anyone if that's hurting their ears. I think that's fine now. But yes, having working in that field, working in the industry, you understand. And I was saying to this doctor the other day who's in training, and they're saying, "Oh, do you feel like really angry towards the medical facility for failing you?" And I'm like, well, to be fair, it's not their fault. That is their training. That is the conditioning that's set up by society for, and it's governed by a multi-trillion-dollar industry, pharmaceutical industry, and that is a well-worn path. But equally, if it's not working for people, then to be able to say, well, there is another way, means that they don't then lose all hope and feel helpless. What they're doing. And I think you'd said as well that with the patients that you work with, what you've learned from the program yourself, you've been looking to share with your patients.
Yeah, it's really changed what I've learned doing this program, just about the body, about its processes, and about what lifestyle and diet modifications can do. It's changed the way that I practice, because I feel that now I know those things. I can't hold them in. I can't withhold them from people who I feel would benefit from that, especially having witnessed the power of those things myself.
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's the power that we have within our bodies, and we don't know, and I think some people feel, somebody said to me the other day, I feel quite scared, the idea of even considering another route. And what I would say to those people is, if I know when I started my journey, I had to carve all this out and figure it all out by myself, but I would go up to my doctor and say, this is what I'm doing. Would you please support me? So if anybody did feel that they needed that support, and equally, I've had women who've had doctors throw pieces of paper on the floor and say, oh, that's ridiculous, that doesn't work. And then they've gone back 12 weeks later and said, hello, I'm feeling so much better now, Right. So it's fantastic that you have that understanding, and that has opened your mind. And what do you think it is about what's shared? I mean, you said that you've learned about the body, but what have you learned about your body now that you didn't know at the beginning of the program?
Yeah. I mean, I suspected that everything was interconnected, and in medical training, you learn that to a degree, but even though you learn that in theory, we still treat our bodies like there's a head, and then like anything below it is just a completely different entity. Yeah. So I really, learning the science behind how interconnected everything is in terms of emotions and hormone and diet and nutrients and how all of these things are just interconnected. It caused a lot of aha moments for me. I should put it that way. But yeah, there's just so much that I learned. It's great.
Oh, well, I'm so glad. I know. And I set it up in a way that I felt that the more I was learning about how everything worked and how everything was interconnected, the more excited I got. I use that word excited a lot, but I did get excited, literally. The more when my son's doing biology at school and he comes home and he shares, and I'm like, I know, it's amazing how our bodies work, isn't it? And how certain things affect different things. And I think once we have that information and we have that education, it can keep ourselves inspired, and we can make the necessary changes that need to be made. And I do kind of want to come back to some of the changes that you had to make, because I'm sure people are thinking, oh, I don't want to eat, lettuce leaves and turn into a rabbit for the rest of my life. I mean, so how would you explain some of the essential, basic, foundational changes that have supported your body to heal?
Yeah, so I cut out wheat and gluten, which made a huge difference for me in a lot of ways. It decreased the length of my periods, how heavy they were. My skin cleared up. I'd had acne before. More energy, felt better after meals. I'd been having some nausea every now and then. That went away. So they're cutting out wheat, essentially cutting out dairy, except eggs. Eat eggs. And then sugar, really, really decreasing what I eat there, and being really choosy about what type of sugar, if I do eat it, you know, in terms of like natural sugars versus processed,
Yeah.
cutting out soy. And then, you know, the supplements, some supplements that you recommend, and then the lifestyle changes, adding a little bit of meditation into each day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. That has been hugely helpful.
Yeah.
Even a small amount, and the journaling and you know, writing down, you know, what you eat and how it makes you feel, and starting to be able to see those connections. So those are the big changes that I've done, and I've noticed huge results with those. So
That's awesome. And full credit to you for being open to the suggestions and, taking them on board and doing them every day. Because again, that resistance that we talk about, that kind of better, faster, more now impatient parts that we have, sometimes go, oh, it's not, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be changing that. But actually, and that's why the program's structured in a way so that when they're, it's drip fed, and if there are, there are blocks or there are things, then we move through them rather than like, fall back. So what about, obviously you have a lovely little daughter, and how do you feel this program has kind of helped you to help her as she gets older?
yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, for one thing, me feeling better, I feel like I can be just a better mom. I was really worried when I had a daughter, and when I had realized what was wrong with me, because my mother had endometriosis, and I just thought, oh no, I've given something terrible to my sweet little girl, and I don't want her to struggle in all the ways that I have. But I feel so empowered about that now, that, I have control over myself, and I have control over what kinds of things go in her body and on her body, growing
Yeah.
up. And I can kind of alter her environment because I have this information, and maybe she won't have to deal with those things that I dealt with.
Yeah.
I have that awareness, and I can pass it on to her, and make sure that she doesn't have to go through that.
No, absolutely. Or you can drill it into her, like I've done with my daughter. I'm like, you do not want to go through decades of pain. I mean,
Yeah.
decades. I mean, can you remember the first time that you started suffering with endometriosis? What age you were at?
I was in high school, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I ran cross country, and I would get this horrible abdominal pain. And doctor after doctor, my parents would bring me, oh, it's nothing, you're constipated, or you're stressed, or you're a teenage girl. But now I realize that's what that was, because it just intensified throughout my 20s, and then really intensified after I had my daughter, and after I'd had some surgeries and things like that. So
yeah. So we're talking, and that's what's scary, isn't it? And I was interviewing somebody else, last week, and since she was 11 years old, she's been in pain. Since I was 11 years old, I had 33 years. I mean, how you clock up all those years that you're going to be saving. I'm saving my daughter, you're saving your daughter. So it's quite it's quite emotional, I think, to feel, our daughters are not going to have to suffer as we've suffered because of the information, the education that we now have. And hearing you talk, when you say I have the power, it really is empowerment on a whole level. And what's wonderful as well is, when I do speak to students, a year down the line, 18 months down the line, they're still pain-free, they're still symptom-free, and not only just symptom-free and pain-free, they're starting to thrive and flourish. Who would have thought a woman with endometriosis would flourish, even have that word in the same sentence? But because they understand what was causing the problems in their body, and they have the power to swap these things out.
Right. Yeah. And that's what feels really extra wonderful about this process, is that it is empowering to take control over your health, and to make changes, and learn about yourself, and see the fruits of that labor. Because I don't know about other people, but You know, when I would go to a doctor and would leave the building feeling like, well, maybe I am crazy. You know, their tests say there's nothing wrong with me, but I know that there's something wrong with me. You know, all the control was in their hands, you know, but now it's in mine, and it's very empowering.
Absolutely. And hearing you say that gives me shivers on my skin, because I was saying to someone yesterday, I was doing an interview for a film that's coming up on my story, so I can share this with more people. And she's saying, to understand, if you have suffering to the degree that you are with this condition, which is a chronically debilitating condition anyway, that nobody understands, then you have a medical professional saying there's nothing wrong with you and you should be thankful you don't have cancer. That's what they said to me. And I'm like, yes, but I'm getting sicker and sicker and sicker. I'm feeling so hopeless, in such a place of despair. But to be able to take power, to be able to understand and educate yourself and reclaim your life back, your body back, is very different. I mean, so the emotional element, that's why it was very important for me to you know, express the emotional elements just as important, because by the time women have come onto the program, I know my own journey, having people tell you that you're making this up. And I joked with this woman yesterday, and I said, yes, that's right, because when I was a little girl, I wanted to grow up and be in bedridden for 3 years in high levels of chronic pain. That was my dream. What a ridiculous thing for someone to say, insinuating that you're somehow a hypochondriac. That's not what any woman's aspiration is to be in high levels of pain and, doubled up. So what would you say to anyone who's heard this now and feeling inspired, and they're feeling a bit nervous, and they're just like, oh, what do I do? My doctor's saying I should have another surgery. What would you be saying to this, to anyone who's listening, to any of the listeners?
Oh, just try this. Try this. Because, and I think you've mentioned it before, there's no side effects to this. It takes work, it takes motivation. But it's entirely worth it, and to kind of touch on what we were just talking about. I mean, I'd been to surgeons, I'd been to doctors, I'd been to OBGYNs, I had dabbled in the natural realm of things. Like, I'd been to a chiropractor, I'd been to an acupuncturist, I'd been to a naturopath. And honestly, none of that helped.
Yeah.
even, and for some people, those alternative things, they can be really helpful. But even if it did, it was transient. And what did help was making these changes myself, getting in tune with my body, learning what it was that was holding me back from healing. And once I started really making those changes, I saw results. So try it.
Exactly. And I even offer a 14-day money-back guarantee, because I don't want there to be any obstacles for people coming into this and trying it and seeing the wealth of information and education that's there to empower every woman to get their lives back. Well, look, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out again. You're looking so well and glowing, and I'm sure that this will be very inspiring to many, many women out there. And it's so important to get this message out that there is another way, that you can heal naturally through the Laidlaw protocols, and you can get your life back. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks very much.